Good afternoon, folks. It's Robert Chappell, Executive Editor of Madison365, with your daily update for Wednesday, September 8th. The update today is brought to you by Forward Theater Company, presenting Mom, How Did You Meet the Beatles? This is a play by legendary American playwright Adrienne Kennedy and her son Adam P. Kennedy. This autobiographical experience is a personal account of Miss Kennedy, who was hired to write a stage version of John Lennon's new book in 1960s London. It's a story about holding artistic ground in the patriarchal world of show business. Presented in the Playhouse at Overture Center September 9th, which is tomorrow, through the 26th. Tickets available at forwardtheater.com, and that's theater with an ER, not with an RE. So we thank Forward Theater for the support of Madison 365 and the daily update. The news today, um, not great. I'll give you the one bit of good news. Not any one day number is never really good news, really bad news. It's just one day number. But I will say that the hospitalization number today is slightly lower than yesterday. That's all I can. That's all I can find in terms of a bright spot for today. We are now at 1,039 people hospitalized as of today. That's 6 lower than yesterday. That's still a 10% increase from a week ago, but for one day, it's slightly lower than it was the day before. The trend in hospitalizations is still sharply upward. There's still about a third of those people who are hospitalized in the ICU, which is also not great. 313 people currently hospitalized in the ICU, which also is a 10% increase from a week ago. But all that said, hospitalizations didn't take another jump upward today. The rest of the COVID news is not good at all. So today, we are reporting 2,064 new cases. That's the first day this week that it's over 2,000, but that's because the testing and the reporting over the holiday weekend was on the low side, right? So today we're starting to catch up with some of that data. As a result of that, the positive test rate, which is kind of, again, you never want to look at one number in isolation. You just want to put context around the numbers. But the one number, if you were to pick a number that's like the most indicative of how are we doing right now, that's the positive test rate. That's the percentage of tests in the past 7 days that have come back positive, and that is 8.4, which is very, very bad and really too high. It was 8 yesterday, so that's a big jump. And that has been trending upward since, it was below 1% at the end of June. So to go straight up all the way to 8.4 in a couple of months is very bad. Again, that number, any public health folks will tell you, needs to be below 3. It has now been above 3 for, over a month, since about July 21st or so is when it broke 3 and has been going up ever since. The peak, just for context, was 17 back in November. November 10th, it was 17.1. Okay, so we're not there yet. But at this time last year, it was actually about what it is now. It was 6.6 right now last year. It broke 8. It was over 8 about a week from now. So by mid-September, it was over 8 last year, on its way up to 17.1. So on most of these measures, we're 2 to 4 weeks ahead of where we were last year, which would mean we might peak earlier and then come back down, or we might reach those peaks from last year and keep going up. Remains to be seen. So hospitalizations, I mentioned, were down slightly. Deaths, unfortunately, are not. 17 deaths confirmed yesterday. Again, those are not 17 deaths happened yesterday. We just didn't have as much reporting of deaths either over the holiday weekend. There's a lot of steps involved in confirming and getting that data into the state database. So 17 deaths were confirmed yesterday. They may have happened over the past 3 to 4 weeks, though. But that puts our 7-day average of reported deaths at 8. Right, that was 7 yesterday, but it was 9 last week, so still a little bit down. But still, 17 new deaths in any given day is not great news. So again, that's basically that's the picture right now. Everything is slightly worse than it was the last couple of days. Everything is kind of pretty close to what it was last week before the holiday weekend. So I think right now what we're seeing is a pretty accurate picture. Anytime you have a weekend or a long weekend, especially, you kind of lose sight of everything because there's not as much testing and not as much reporting happening, right? But now we're back to where we've got a pretty good picture of what's going on. The picture's not very good. It's not as bad as Florida. It's not as bad as Louisiana. Not as bad as Missouri, right? But it's not good. It's not as good as it could be. We are currently 52% fully vaccinated right now. That's up 0.1% since yesterday. 55.4% of Wisconsin has at least one shot. And I will say the average number of doses given is coming back down. And that is very likely due to the holiday weekend. Again, we're at 7,800 people, or not 7,800 people, 7,800 doses given per day for the past 7 days. But 3 of those days were Saturday, Sunday, Monday of Labor Day weekend. So nobody's like going to get vaccinated those days, probably, or I should say nobody, very few. But for much of like last week, the daily average is over 10,000 doses per day, which is still not quite enough, right? Right now, what's happening is about 0.1% of the state population is finishing their vaccine every day. At that pace, to get to 70% vaccinated, which is kind of what we're aiming for in terms of herd immunity, it's going to take us another 6 months to get there for Wisconsin, right? So Wisconsin, at this present rate, will not hit herd immunity until like March of next year, right around this 2-year anniversary of the pandemic. Now, I do think that the rate will pick up as soon as children are authorized to get vaccinated. We did see when the vaccines were first being rolled out, like in December, January of this year, we saw a lot of people try to get it, and a lot of people were clamoring to get it. A lot of people who weren't yet eligible, right? They had a whole big thing about there was older people were eligible first, people over 65. And then there was a big push to get people who are younger than 65 who had health issues, comorbidities and stuff to get eligible. And then you got everybody 16 and up, and then it was everybody 12 and up. And every time there was a new bit of eligibility, there would be a big rush of people. And that peaked in April. We were doing 65,000 doses per day. Right. And then that kind of has waned. And like sort of everybody who really wanted it got it in those first couple of months. And we've been kind of like coming down, and now we're at like 7,800 per day. Right. So my prediction, and hold me to this if I'm wrong, is that once children are eligible, like a lot of those folks who were clamoring to get it, who really wanted to get vaccinated right away, who trusted it, who wanted to get it taken care of, do their part, are will get their kids done then right away. So I would imagine we'll have a whole big influx of kids getting vaccinated in those first couple of months after kids become eligible. Now, my podcast co-host Stephanie is a little bit skeptical of that, and she said, if you listen to the podcast this morning, she was kind of saying like, getting yourself vaccinated is one thing, getting your kids vaccinated is another thing. And there might be some folks who are not hesitant for themselves, but who are hesitant for their kids. She's probably got a point there. But I still think there will be a rush of folks. So as soon as they get eligible from age 2 to 11, my sense is that there will be another uptick in vaccines. This is a good question from Kathy. Have you heard what I did the other day, that the Mu variant may not be affected by the vaccine? Kind of. Like I heard something similar to that, and I don't have a lot of information, so don't take what I'm about to tell you and go tell your friends. Okay, the Mu variant specifically, I did not hear that the Mu variant specifically would not be affected by the vaccine. What I have heard is that the Mu variant, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Mu or Mu, basically the M variant, is really rampant in Central America right now. Has not yet reached the United States, or if it has very, very small numbers. So it's like it's not even on the CDC's radar as a variant of concern right now. It's a variant of interest right now because it just hasn't reached the United States. That said, we know that basically anything, it's a pandemic. Pan means worldwide, right? If it hasn't reached us, it will, because that's how pandemics work. So I'm not saying that don't worry about it because it's not here yet. I'm just saying it isn't here yet. It is. You're right. It isn't. Very, very small numbers in California right now. I have not heard anything that indicates that particular variant is vaccine resistant. Right. We also know that Delta is not vaccine resistant, but it is so highly contagious that even though that variant itself is not vaccine resistant, you can still spread it if you're vaccinated, right? Those are two separate things. Kind of a distinction without a difference, right? Kind of not a meaningful difference, but I think you know what I'm trying to say. So with that said, Mu is apparently, there's not a lot of data yet to say this definitively, but the concern is that it is actually even more contagious than Delta, which would mean that even if that variant is not vaccine resistant or immune to vaccine, that it still could be even more likely to be spread by vaccinated people. But again, if we are all vaccinated, and we're just passing coronavirus around each other from vaccinated person to vaccinated person, that would be kind of okay. So even if a particular variant is somewhat vaccine resistant or can still be spread even among vaccinated people, still get vaccinated so that when you do get it, it's not bad for you. And if you pass it on to other vaccinated people, it's not bad for them. Right? Now, separate from the Mu variant, there is some theoretical speculation that future variants could actually be vaccine resistant. I'm not even sure that's the correct scientific way to say it, except maybe a better way to say it is that there will be variants in the future that the vaccine won't protect you against at all. or as well. Uh, I haven't seen that referred to as a new variant. I haven't heard of any particular variants that have been identified that have no properties. But my understanding is that there's some scientific, not just people trying to scare you, not just speculation by people like me who don't know, but actual scientific speculation that it would make sense, given the way things are going, that there would be a variant in the future that would render our current vaccine regimen ineffective, which is frightening. It's not there yet. Again, that as far as I have heard, Kathy and everybody else listening, that's pure speculation right now. But mu variant is a real thing. Mu variant is a substantial portion of cases in certain areas in Central America, and I'm not going to say which countries because I don't want to get it wrong. But I did see that there were specific countries in Central and South America where mu variant is becoming predominant, and appears to be even more contagious than Delta, which is, as we know, something like 6 to 8 times more contagious than Alpha or whatever OG COVID was. So yeah, it's not great in any sense. So that's what I know about that. I hope that's helpful, Kathy. I know it's not that helpful, but I hope that helps a little bit. All right, we're gonna take a short pause, and we're gonna come back, and I got a few local, state, and national stories for you to talk through real quick before we call it a day. And we will be back. Don't scroll away. We'll be back in 30 seconds, right after this. All right, Sherman Middle School here in Madison on Friday got 2 new murals focused especially on racial equity. These are done by Dane Arts Mural Arts and supported by Salesforce and American Family Insurance. This right here in the middle is the new principal at Sherman Elementary, Alex Thompson. He was there to preside over the unveiling ceremony, and our reporter Pierce Doyle was at that ceremony. So it has the story, has some great photos, and the story at Madison365.org today. Also on the site today, Wisconsin Watch has a story on people with disabilities who were denied unemployment benefits. These are a couple of the attorneys bringing this class action lawsuit against the state. Basically, if you can't get unemployment and Social Security disability at the same time under current state law, which these folks with disabilities see as really unfair. And I can understand their point. So Wisconsin Watch has this story, and we have that on Madison365.org. Also today at the national level in Richmond, Virginia, this photo of the statue is now out of date because that's a statue of Robert E. Lee, and it is now gone from this plaza here in Richmond, Virginia. It's been the trend for a long time. I don't know, not really a long time, a couple of years, to get rid of these statues honoring Confederate generals, which, by the way, were only installed in the Jim Crow era, in the early 20th century. These are not statues that come from the Civil War era, right? They're from much more current times than that, and are now being removed. Talking about schools, I see in the comments folks talking about schools. I believe this 100% that kids are having a hard time keeping their masks on. Here's the problem with that. First of all, those kids can be vaccinated, right? So the whole thing about schools is layers of mitigation. You can't just do one thing. You got to do the mask, got to do the distancing, you got to do the sanitation, you got to do the ventilation, air filters. You got to do all that whole suite of things. This is what the science tells us, right? And vaccination is one of those suite of things. Can be one of the layers for those older kids, but we're not requiring them to be vaccinated. So you got to kind of hope that they are or trust that they are. And if they're not, like a high school kid, basically a kid over 12, is an adult as far as the virus is concerned, right? So they can spread it just as well as anybody else. Now I do know we're going to keep tabs on DJ. Let me know, is this Madison East you're talking about? I assume this is Madison East, not like Appleton East. But yeah, this is they're basically adults, and they're not masking inside in Dane County. I can tell you that there are some schools doing layers, the more rural schools. I know here in Mount Horeb, for example, they're doing the best they can with the layers. They're not requiring vaccination of students for sure, but they are doing the masks, as much distancing as they can. They're opening the windows as much as they can. They're getting kids outside as much as they can. But it's really hard. It's impossible to do everything you're supposed to do, and the result is going to be classrooms are going to get closed, and kids are and without the they're going to go virtual for 2 weeks. They're just going to close. They're just going to send kids home. I don't know. It's hard to say. Varies district to district probably, but it's tough to say you got to do it virtual again, because that, like, nobody's going to do that. Nobody wants to do that. And with Delta much more infectious and affecting children more than last year's COVID did, the fact is this country prioritized commerce over education. Right? We could have kept schools open last year probably if we really did lockdown, shut everything else down fully. But that's not what happened here. When you say, like, people say, like, well, other countries kept their schools open. Yeah, but they closed everything else. We didn't do that here. So this is where we are. And we can complain about it all we want, but this is the reality of the situation is kids are in school. They're, for the most part, doing pretty well. They're doing better than they were virtually. Not every individual kid. I mean, a lot of individual kids have did okay in virtual schooling, but as a whole, as aggregate, it wasn't great because it was outdoors. Is the reason Camp Randall was allowed to have 80,000 unmasked people. It was outdoors. I don't think it shouldn't be real confusing to high school kids, unless they're just trying to find excuses not to put their masks on. They say, well, I don't have to wear a mask. There's 80,000 people at Camp Randall not wearing masks because they were outdoors. There's a lot of us, a lot of folks on the sort of pro-mask, pro-vaccine side. Every time there's a big event outdoors, we all go, oh, it's going to be a super spreader, and it never is. The only large outdoor event that has now been super spreader twice is Sturgis, big motorcycle rally, because it's 700,000 people, right? It's a sort of a critical mass of number of people, but also a lot of people at that big Sturgis rally are indoors, right? That's not an exclusively outdoor event. An exclusively outdoor event, as to my knowledge, has never been a super spreader event. I'm much more concerned. Like the Camp Randall is the easier thing to look at and say super spreader. I'm much more concerned about everybody who's in bars watching that game. That's where the super spreaders are. And there's 100 people in a bar with their masks off because they're actively eating, yelling and cheering. Although the Badger game didn't give them a lot to cheer about, but still, the point is, it's indoors. So again, oh yeah, this is 100% true. That the federal money is all used up, right? As Kathy notes here, it's impossible to contact trace this variant. They're not even trying. There's some effort, some little bit of effort, but not nearly enough. It's just impossible. There's just they don't have the federal money's all gone. They don't have the staff at the county level to contact trace. It's just not going to happen. People are kind of left to contact trace themselves. Like, hey, you're positive. Call everybody you've been in touch with recently. School districts are doing as much as they can within their classrooms, but not full contact tracing. Like if somebody in a classroom gets positive, they alert everybody who is in close contact in the school, but they can't possibly call everybody who's been in touch with that person, right? So I'm aware of at least one classroom in Madison that has had some exposure, at one classroom in Cottage Grove that's had some exposure. So, if you hear of your kid's classroom getting shut down or getting exposed or whatever, email me, news@madison365.org, and just let us know, because school districts, even though it's public record, supposedly, they're not going to alert the media that they had to close a classroom. Yeah, I understand this, Gene. But the fact is that everything you say here, Gene, is that people are surrounded on all four sides, unmasked people right next to each other and screaming, right? All of that would seem to indicate that those are going to be super spreader events. But we've had large crowds at sporting events around the world for 8 months now, and it just hasn't happened. I don't know why. Like, everything you say is right. Like, obviously this is going to be a super spreader event, right? But and then it just never is. Again, it's just that dramatic a difference, outdoors to indoors. I don't know, but it's just not. Like, it's really easy to point at that and say stop it, but that's not where the spread is happening. The spread is happening at the people watching it at the bars, and at schools, and at workplaces, and in retail, which are now all open, by the way, unrestricted. So, all right, that is basically all I have for you today. Sorry to end on a bummer note. Sorry to sound angry there for a second. But transportation is the other thing. Yeah, the restaurants. Yep. Transportation, again, airplane, buses, restaurants. Restaurants are the worst because you're allowed to keep your mask off. Because coronavirus doesn't spread while you're eating. Everybody knows that, right? Obviously, that's not true. Obviously, it's spreading just as much while you're eating as any other time. So I don't know why we think that's okay. It's just, I mean, the reason we think it's okay is because we're weighing this, we being public health folks, are weighing this balance between public health and commerce. And last year we erred on the side of public health. This year we're erring on the side of commerce because there's some sense that vaccines are going to help with that. And I'm not seeing it right now. The question is, are we going to peak early and then keep going up, or just peak early and then come back down? I don't know. Anyway, I got to run. And you got to run. We all got stuff to do. So thank you very much for your time and attention. Take care of yourself out there. Keep fighting the good fight. And we'll be back again tomorrow. Have a great day.
This is 365 Media.